Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, welcome, namaste, to our Saturday noon reading and discussion of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as translated by and interpreted by Swami Prabhavananda and Christopher Isherwood. I'm going to read just the tail end of Sutra 49, Chapter 1. We've been talking about revelation, about samadhi, and its effects. So here's what is said right at the end of 49. Revelation must bring with it complete renewal of the mind and transformation of character. The right relation between prayer and conduct, wrote Archbishop Temple, is not that conduct is supremely important and prayer may help it, but that prayer is supremely important and conduct tests it. Prayer is supremely important and conduct tests it. In other words, are we receiving the benefits of spiritual practice, which is, as Swami Swahananda used to say, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. And if this is true in the preliminary phase of spiritual life, it should be even more strikingly demonstrated in the final. That word escapes me. What is that word? Intuitive. The final intuitive state of samadhi.
Actually, it is unitive state. It says unitive, Brother Shankara.
Unitive, okay. It
Yes.
should be even more strikingly demonstrated in the final unitive state of samadhi. In achieving that, a man becomes a saint. For as Patanjali says, and now this is Sutra 50, the impression which is made upon the mind by that samadhi, and by the way, it is meant the lower samadhi. Otherwise, he wouldn't be talking about an impression on the mind. There is no mind in the higher samadhi, nirvikalpa. We're talking about savikalpa or nirvichara samadhi. The impression which is made upon the mind by that samadhi wipes out all other past impressions. Now, what does it mean, wipes out? We'll hear what the Swami has to say, and then I'll have a few words to say about it. And now he goes on to tell us how to take the ultimate step into complete union with Brahman. Now, where he's talking about going beyond that lower samadhi, which relieves us of the karmic debt and its effects on the mind by all other past impressions. Now, 51. Notice the numbers. 5 is the number of sudden change. 6 is the number of predictable change. 51. When the impression made by that samadhi is also wiped out, so that there is no more thought waves, so that there are, when the impression made by that samadhi is also wiped out, so that there are no more thought waves at all in the mind, then one enters the samadhi, which is called seedless, nirvikalpa, or nirvikalpa samadhi. So let's go back to 50. That lower samadhi wipes out all other past impressions. What does this mean? It doesn't mean that they disappear from the mind, because the mind remains. It simply means that they become powerless. They become dormant. You have not watered them by your attention. You have directed your attention elsewhere, which has resulted in this nirvichara or savikalpa samadhi. And so these past impressions, what is meant by wiped out, however, is their karmic effect is no longer. This is salvation. This is moksha. This is freedom from limitation. No more limitation by your past impressions. You are no longer compelled by your past impressions to certain kinds of behaviors or to certain ways of thinking, certain ways of speaking. That is wiped out. This is what Krishna speaks of in the Gita when he says, "Turn to me with utter devotion." And he has said earlier that that utter devotion depends on meditation. You won't achieve it without meditation. Turn to me in utter devotion. I see no sinner. All past impressions are wiped out. Holiness itself shall transform you. And this is exactly what Patanjali means by this sutra. So let's just go back and read it again. When the impression made by that samadhi is also wiped out, so that there are no more thought waves at all in the mind, then one enters that samadhi, which is called seedless. Now, this movement from the one state to the other is now, we're talking about the seventh and eighth limbs of Patanjali's yoga, in which he says, the first 6 limbs depend on your self-effort. The seventh and eighth, which is this higher samadhi and liberation, they are something that happens to you. Holiness itself shall transform you. So before we go on, is there any comment from your own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that this makes evident to you and that you would like to share with us? Because this is, now we're going to move on into the practice. Very soon we'll be moving on into the practice. We've been talking about the aims of yoga and the fact that the aim of yoga is no more thought waves in the mind. We've now reached the sutra which tells us this is what happens when you achieve that state of no more thought waves in the mind, no more vrittis, whirlpools in the chitta, the mind stuff, which is throughout the whole body. So any comments from your own wisdom or experience about this, or any concern or question?
Hi, Brother Shankara.
Yes.
Shankara, I want to inquire about the depth of these past impressions. For example, if somebody told me, I'll share with you, my son, I talk a lot about him. So what happened, I asked him to do something in the past and he said no. So today, I didn't even ask him. And that is because, there's a past impression. He said no, so, he's going to say no again. Or I don't know what, but I didn't even ask him. And, and I end up doing if he would have helped me, it would have been much easier. But I took on so much and didn't even ask him to help. Is that the depth of the past impression that, even for everybody, I have an opinion that, okay, when I see Brother Shankara, he's like this. When I see Haimaji, that's also, from my past experiences. And that somewhere stops me from being with you right now at this moment, or, just being me to be free at this moment to ask whatever I want to ask.
Yes.
Is that the past impression, what it is?
Well, everything, dear. This is what we'll talk about tomorrow morning in the topic one dreamer, 3 dreams. Mm-hmm. Everything that is within time, space, and causation is within Maya. Everything is our past impressions.
Everything,
without exception. This moment is generating an impression. It then becomes a past impression in the next moment. So everything depends. We make our universe out of our past impressions. Our universe disappears. In other words, your universe disappears when there are no more thought waves in the mind, because your universe depends on all these past impressions that have now been wiped out, including the impression left by the Savikalpa or Nirvichara Samadhi, which is this unitive experience, this feeling that I am that. But it's an experience. I feel I am a part of it. Nothing else then compares with that experience. And so slowly and slowly then, for most people, slowly and slowly, having achieved that lower samadhi state, they slowly and slowly become complete. They stop watering their past impressions. Their past impressions are wiped out. The karmic effects of them are wiped out. So they're no longer suffering the effects, both negative and positive. I say suffering because even as Patanjali will point out to us very pointedly, even the good impressions are a limitation. So going beyond limitation means leaving behind all impressions. So everything, Somesh, depends on our past impressions. We don't know anything except our past impressions, which are the result of the reflection of buddhi, intellect, in its highest form, intellect, buddhi, the discriminative faculty, and ahamkara, the I maker, but there is only one ahamkara, there is only one buddhi. It reflects in us. And so we have this reflection that, along with our past impressions, then, which give us this name and form. Give us name and form. We have names for all those past impressions when they arise. And this is what we'll talk about tomorrow morning, the depth of these past impressions. We have a waking awareness.
So I don't have any power in me right now to not act as per my past impression, or to not be in that. I don't like till I reach that stage where those past impressions are.
Yes, you do, Somesh.
They do.
The discriminative faculty is awaken you. You wouldn't be here this morning if it were not. So the discriminative power is awaken you. So this is where we depend on our self-effort. We discriminate against these past impressions that are inauspicious for us, and we release their hold on us. Or we allow them to be released by pushing on beyond them. As Swami Prabhavananda said, don't focus so much about your limitations. Don't focus on all this that you're experiencing here in the land of the West, the land of death and rebirth. You have seen the light in the East. In your actions, through your spiritual practices, but more than anything else, by your priority, by your intention, move toward that light you have seen in the East, he says. And spontaneously, you will leave behind these things. So the power is in your ability to set your priorities and form and follow your intentions. And the more you do that deliberately, perseveringly, persistently, daily, the more it happens. So yes, you have tremendous power. But when you have finally purified the mind enough and you achieve this nirvichara samadhi, you purify the mind by leaving behind the lower impressions and replacing them with higher impressions. As we get to the practice part of this book, we'll see that this is the first step that Patanjali says. And of course, in his practice, in the limbs of yoga, this reflects itself in the yamas, leaving behind the lower impressions and their behaviors, and replacing them with the niyamas, the observances, which give us a new frame of reference for ourselves, our thoughts, our actions, and so on. So this is what we'll get to all that. But don't think you don't have any power. As Vivekananda says over and over, you have no idea what power you have. It is simply to be released by letting go of it, what is limiting it. The power of the mind is unlimited, he says, both in his preface and introduction to his translation and commentary on the Yoga Sutras, but also in a talk he gave that you can find in that file, that PDF file of these complete works. The talk is The Powers of the Mind. The Powers of the Mind. And so I recommend reading that talk. And then you'll see, oh my God, I am not powerless. But it's a matter of priority and intention and recollectedness, constant recollectedness of my priorities and my intentions, which is very difficult because the world is very expert at distracting us. I mean, it's Sri Ramakrishna says, Mother gives us a sign of her eye, saying, go enjoy the world. I've always translated that in my own mind as she gives us a little wink. She gives us a little wink saying, go, enjoy. And Krishna says in the Gita, it's very hard to overcome my Maya. But you can if you persist and if that's what you want. Now, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but I thought it deserved all of that. Anything
Thank
else
you. Really helpful.
from you or anyone else?
I want to make a comment, Brother Shankara.
Please do, dear.
Oops, someone else is trying to do it. I would let her go.
No, you go first.
Okay. It's mostly, it wipes out all the unproductive thoughts and feelings of our past ones. And also we develop healthy boundaries towards people who are very negative. We start developing, we don't cut them off, we just understand, we accept them just the way they are, but we develop healthy boundaries between them
Yes.
and you.
All that is the replacing of the lower
Exactly.
with
All
the
that
higher impression.
power comes automatically. It slowly enters into your body, mind, spirit, or whatever you call it. It enters into our spirit. Then, it purifies our
Yes,
hearts.
indeed it does.
It does.
Yes, it does.
It
And
slowly happens.
it slowly happens. And it
Like
happens.
you said, it's hard. It's not easy. It's not
Right.
easy.
What is hard is making ourselves do the practice.
Discipline, yes.
We do the practice,
Discipline.
then we get the results.
Exactly.
It's like anything else. If you wanted to become an expert chef, would you be able to cook like Julia Child the next day? No. You'd have to learn and learn and learn. All of you have to learn your tools, you have to learn your materials, you have to learn and learn and learn. It's the same.
Even
And
driving a car, imagine.
Say it again, dear.
Driving a car, how did we do that? We had to take classes.
That's
We had
right.
to practice. We had to make accidents. And some of us not,
Right.
some people make accidents, and then you learn, you fall down and you get up, and then you become an expert driver finally.
Yes.
Hopefully, we all do that. It's the same thing as the meditation is too. We fall
Precisely.
down and we come back
Right,
and
exactly.
contemplate, and then finally we settle down. That is when it wipes out all these unproductive, negative feeling that we gave birth to in our mind or spirit. Then it slowly dissipates, and slowly we start seeing the peace, contentment.
The experiences we have due to the influence of Maya are what produce them in our mind.
That's what I think. Thank you.
We do not produce them. Very rarely do we deliberately produce something negative.
We gathered it while we were growing up. We gathered from our folks who raised us, people around us, all the negativity stuck in us. And then we unstuck all that stuff. We swim through those sharks and get rid of those sharks, and we come out with the unitive state.
Yes, we smear ourselves with the turmeric of discrimination.
Yes.
Turmeric.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful little sutras.
Yes.
Gives us more wisdom. Thank you, Brother.
Swayam, you had something.
Yes, Brother Shankara, a couple of points that I wanted to do manana with you and the rest to make sure that my understanding is right so that I can assimilate the right essence. The first one is that so our outward going senses gather the information, then our intellect or discriminative capacity comes to some kind of a conclusion, and it's our unripe ego which then appropriates it to this body and mind. Is that correct so far? What I've been?
Yes, it's all correct, except that it's all the ripe ego does exactly the same thing. It just ends up with different results because of different intentions. It's until you are an expert singer, you don't sing expertly. But when you are an expert singer, Sri Ramakrishna says, you cannot hit a false note. You're still, the inexpert singer is making the music. The expert singer, the music is making the singer. The music simply flows through that singer. You can see it. You can see it in an expert dancer. You can see it in an expert singer. You watch the great sopranos, the great tenors like Pavarotti. They simply open their mouths, and within a few moments, their eyes are rolled back in their head quite literally. And they are simply being the music. And you can see the same thing in the conductor, Gustavo Dudamel. You watch him conduct. You see, he's in a trance. He is literally in a trance. Doing what? His intention, as he says, is to make every note sacred. The highest aspiration that a musician could possibly have. So it isn't that it's as we transition from the unripe ego to the ripe ego, the same process, as long as we remain embodied, the same process goes on of gathering the information, but then what happens to it once it's gathered? It is dealt with very differently by the ripe ego. And nothing harmful happens as a result. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So the spiritual practice, I guess, helps us put a little bit more distance between this little the garment, and as we put more and more distance, then we kind of go from the lower to the right.
It begins by putting a distance. Later on, it becomes that things lose their distance entirely. They become immediate, spontaneous, fluid. As Scrooge says to his clerk, Bob Cratchit, after his illumination, Scrooge says, "I have not taken leave of my senses, Bob. I have come to them." So the senses themselves are transformed. The whole of your antakarana is transformed by this holiness that transforms you. You become holy. You become, as the Swami said, you become saintly. It's no longer a matter of intention and priority. You've done that. As Patanjali will tell us, then something happens to you. And Sri Krishna explains it so nicely. After you have turned, because of your spiritual practices, in utter devotion to the divine, then that's the end of your self-effort. That's the end of this discrimination and renunciation. No longer is it necessary for you to do this. The music is making you, and holiness itself shall transform you. And that's a never-ending process. We are part of infinite being, being as a verb. We are part of infinite being. We are that which is infinite being. And so as Swami Brahmananda, Raja Maharaj said, light, more light, is there no end to it? No, there is no end to it, because it is infinite, as we are. Though we may not be aware of it at this moment, we do get intimations of it. As the wonderful poet Wordsworth put it, intimations of immortality. You can read his poem, Intimations of Immortality. It's beautiful.
Thank you for that clarification, Brother Shankara. And real quickly, the other point that I'm trying to kind of digest is uh, if our uh, personality, so to speak, is a combination of the gunas, and the gunas are, like you often mentioned, elements of nature, like the periodic table combining. So, with spiritual practice, if the composition is changed, then ultimately when we get the equilibrium, that's basically the thought, the chitta vritti, or the thoughtless mind. Is that um,
Well, yes, exactly. The but until you become in this seedless state, and I say you become that because you're no longer intentional about it. You simply have become that. The music is now making you. Until that, what happens is you're still within the gunas. You're still within the realm. But the predominant guna, predominant at all times, is sattva. So, and now this is the direction you're headed. You're headed in this direction of revelation. That is the nature of sattva. It is the revealing power, the power of revelation. So you're no longer limited in the same way by the gunas of uh, um, the concealing power of tamas and the projecting power. That all that is there, very minor. You cannot exist without them. The body itself is a limitation. The body and everything associated with is a limitation. Just ask an old person. But the fact is that it's transformed. Your relationship to it is transformed. So it's sattva is the predominant. But when, as Patanjali tells us, ultimately you go beyond even the goodness and revealing power of sattva, because within this seedless state, as you have become that, there's nothing more to be revealed. You simply are that. And what happens then cannot be expressed because there is nothing there to express it. As Adi Shankara said, when he achieved that state of realization, my mind fell like a hailstone into the ocean of consciousness and therein dissolved. Dissolved. Now there's something to be said, I won't go into it now. There's something to be said about the metaphor of the hailstone, but because it doesn't happen all at once.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Sure. Thank you.
Brother,
Yes, Reggie.
so like, let's say I'm attending this session and I can't think of any other activity which I will prioritize over this right now. But it was not like this always. And I'm thinking maybe there is other auspicious activity that I need to find joy in, like because I'm finding joy in this right now. I can discriminate, but even after discriminating, sometimes we don't get the strength to do that activity. But if you find joy in it, then it's very easy for us to do that activity. So, and if I think like this, what is the most auspicious activity which takes us the fastest and the quickest and the surest way? And how do I find joy in it? How do I train myself to find joy in it?
What do you love, Rajiv? What do you love? Find joy in that, and then you will find, if you're looking, you will find the self, capital S self in that. because there is nothing but the self. And the reason we take joy and have love for anything is because it is the self in that form. Even the person who worships wealth, worships name, worships fame, what they don't understand is that it is the self that they are really sensing, and that's what really attracts them. But because they only deal with it superficially, then they get disappointed. It isn't until they learn, it is only the self I am seeking. It is only the self I am seeking. And so I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. And so they finally, and this is why we must not judge or be impatient with anyone. They are doing the very best they can with what they know at that moment. And it may be painful for us to watch them. And it may be very painful for us to watch the consequences of their actions. And if they contravene the laws of our society, of course, they must be curbed. But we must also have faith in Mother's saying, Mother, it is your nature to subdue the conduct of the wicked. So find joy in what you love, and then think. Just be recollected and think, the reason I love this is because of the self. You've heard me tell the story of the goat. There's no reason to tell it again. You've all heard it.
Actually,
Is it
Brother
possible to directly love the self?
Well, that's just what we've been talking about, dear. You Rajiv, this is your tendency. You want to jump from the square you are to the winning square on the board. It's not possible, dear. It is simply not possible. You must do something. Even the highest forms of Advaita say that there must be some training of the mind. And then you annihilate or destroy the mind. Or as Adi Shankaracharya says, but to immediately love the highest self. You have eons of impressions, eons of impressions in you. The power of Maya is very great. It is not called Mahamaya for nothing. So it's to be applauded that you have this aspiration, but even the most advanced direct path Advaita teachers will tell you that some preparation is required. Otherwise, why would they have not known what they knew the minute they encountered? It is the Vedic sayings, yes, the Mahavakyas that are the signposts for the Jnani, the Advaitists. But to annihilate all the mental impressions that are in the mind, even for the most advanced Jnani. I mean, even for an incarnation of God, Rama, Vashishta talked to him steadily for 3 days. It ended up with the Yoga Vashishta. That came down to us as the Yoga Vashishta. Anything else from anyone? Well, first of all, Rajiv, is that satisfactory?
Yes, brother. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankar, I have one comment. Rajiv asked, how do you find joy? you become joyful as you progress in that meditation process. Desires, attachments go, they fly away from you. And then slowly your heart becomes joyful, as if you never had any problems in your life. People think you never went through any problems. That's not true. We have gone through already. So
Well,
you progress, you progress slowly. It may take years, months. I don't know how long, but every person has its own time, his own time.
that's the highest joy.
Yes.
That's the highest joy.
Become joyful in your heart.
Yes, but there is a lower joy. You know, the joy that the farmer had in the company of his goat was a lower joy
Just have to continue to do that.
until it's that familiar feeling of human love. Human love for something.
Right.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now, we know from the teachings that there is something behind it. And we may know, as you say, from your own experience, that there's something behind that there is a higher love, a higher joy,
And we
a
know
higher
ourselves.
bliss.
And we know
And
ourselves
even
automatically. Yes.
yes, it happens spontaneously and automatically
Spontaneously, exactly.
with the practice. But even that, as Vivekananda says, that is just a milestone.
Exactly,
And
exactly. It's
so
just a
that
milestone.
you go on from there.
You go on that path. You start going on that path.
Yes.
At least we can start stepping on that path.
Well,
move forward.
this is the self-effort part.
Yeah.
Is stepping on the path, becoming intentional, setting our priorities so that we make decisions based on very clear priorities.
Thank you.
What do I want? Rajiv is clear about what he wants. Rajiv is clear about what he wants.
Yes.
And he says that's why he's here this morning. Clearly that's so. Otherwise, why would he spend the time? But this is one of the, the instructions. It's instructions 2, 3, and 4 of Swami Prabhupadananda's instructions for meditation. Number 2, patience. Number 3, perseverance. Number 4, expectation. You will achieve what Rajiv says he wants to achieve. You will achieve that highest joy, that unitive consciousness. Call it by whatever name you will. The supreme love. You will achieve it. This is the expectation. But you're not impatient about it, and you're persevering in your self-effort in your pursuit of it. Anything else, dears?
I didn't. Hari Om Shankaraji.
Hari Om Bala. I've been waiting to hear from you.
Yeah, because I'm so interested in what Somesh was saying, his own experience about the, but this is a very common thing. We all face at one time or the other. This is nothing new. But the way I look at this is because it says in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, one of the obstructions for our spiritual practice is memory. So, we have to learn, because I'm not saying anything about him, but I'm using the same impression. He, on the second time, he just decided because of his memory that he didn't want to ask him. So I consider either this is a liking or a disliking, but maybe it is not that way. But what I try to practice in a condition like this, okay, let it go, let it pass. Okay, that is what, maybe he's not in his sattvic mind or rajasic mind, or maybe he's in tamasic action. But if you think, of course, if it is somebody outsider, you don't have to do anything. But if it is because your son you want to teach something to him by asking him to do this with you. For that, you have a choice. Either you let it go, ask him again without any impression.
What is the most powerful way to teach? What is the most convincing way to teach someone?
Is by doing it yourself.
Exactly, by example. By example. So it doesn't matter what one thinks about the other person's motivations, because we can never really truly know or understand. It's far too complex. If we want to understand that, just try to understand your own motivations. Then you'll get some grasp of how difficult that is. And then try to understand the other person's motivations, hopeless condition. So you simply say, okay, if I want my son or anyone else to understand what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it, let me do it with skill, efficiency, and intentionality, and that becomes convincing. So, this business of teaching others, oh my God, it is very, very difficult. I mean, particularly when a person is young, a teenager or something, or in their early 20s. Before that prefrontal cortex is fully formed, they're learning by experience, and a lot of stubbing of their toes, and a lot of skinning of their knees, a lot of bloodying of their noses. And as a parent, you finally reconcile yourself to this and say, I just have to watch. I have to support and sustain as best I can. But, trying to talk to them about it, hopeless condition. So you teach by example, and you teach by saying no to their unreasonable requests.
And
which makes them very mad in the moment, very mad.
Yeah.
And then 40 years later, if you're very fortunate, as I was with my beloved son, 40 years later, or 50 years later, 40 some odd years later, he thanks you for saying no to his unreasonable requests and throwing him back on his own resources.
Mm-hmm. And Brother Shankara, this is fun, because to teach him, first I have to know, like if I teach him, hey, don't get upset. And there are moments
Yes.
I get upset, so there's very less that I know that I can to teach him. So it's better if he can learn by watching. Maybe he can learn, but I hardly have much to teach him.
Well, you have a great deal to teach him, and you're doing it every day,
Mm-hmm.
mostly by what you do and say, and what you don't say. I mean, my father taught me so much when he said to me, don't tell your mother about this. I don't want her to know. In other words, lie to my mother along with my father about where we were and what we were doing. And it just rocked me. It rocked me at the time. And it taught me, I can't trust my father. I can't trust him. Because if he'll lie to my mother, he will lie to me too. And of course, the deep secret was that he was lying to himself constantly. But, I use that personal example just as to illustrate what I mean by we're teaching our children they observe us so closely. They observe us so closely. and they're learning so much from us. And it is a painful responsibility. It is a great and sacred duty to raise children and raise them well, because you have to subject yourself to some austerities and not give way to those things that you might want or do without being self-deceptive. Just, like you say, you must not get angry. Anger teaches it's okay to be angry. It isn't that it's wrong to be angry. It's just that it's often inauspicious, particularly when it's uncontrolled. Thank you so much. And thank you, Balaji. Anything else from anyone? All right, we have 9 minutes left. Let's hear what this Swami is, unless there's something else from anyone. All right, let's hear what this Swami has to say. I'll read this last sutra again. When the impression made by that lower samadhi, I'm just putting in the word lower, when the impression made by that lower samadhi is also wiped out, so that there are no more thought waves at all in the mind, the goal of Patanjali's yoga, there are no more thought waves at all in the mind, then one enters the samadhi, which is called seedless. It has already been explained that samadhi is achieved by raising one object, one great wave of concentration in the mind. What is that word? By raising one object, one great wave of concentration in the mind, by which all other thought waves, all samskaras, or past impressions, are swallowed up. But now even this one wave has to be stilled. And it is a powerful wave. It is a powerful wave, this feeling, I am that. When it has subsided, we enter that highest samadhi of all, which is called nirvikalpa in the Vedanta system of philosophy. We enter. Notice, he doesn't say, we simply enter it. How that happens is absolutely indescribable. Patanjali doesn't try to describe it. He simply says it happens. It will get there. That's in chapter 4. When that one wave has subsided, and this is where Patanjali says it's something that happens to you. Notice the Swami says, not that what you mastered it or you made it go away. No, when it has subsided, we enter that highest samadhi of all, which is called nirvikalpa in the Vedanta system of philosophy. Nirvikalpa samadhi is said to be seedless because it is nothing but pure, undifferentiated consciousness. It contains no phenomenal impressions whatsoever, no seeds of desire and attachment. Now, can any of us conceive of that, what that means right now? I think not. We have no idea what it means to be in that state. I'll read it again. Nirvikalpa samadhi is said to be seedless because it is nothing, no thing. It is no thing but pure, undifferentiated consciousness. It contains no phenomenal impressions whatever, no seeds of desire and attachment. But a man is not an object of concentration. No. Well, Brahman, 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 this word that we have no real definition for, but we have these negative definitions. Brahman is not an object of concentration. In Brahman is neither knower nor known. Now, we don't know what that means. None of us knows what that means. We know only knowing. We don't know what it means. We get intimations. Brahman, as we have seen, is pure, undifferentiated consciousness. And so, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you are no longer yourself. You are no longer yourself. You are literally one with Brahman. You are that. You enter into the real nature of the apparent universe. You enter into the real nature of the apparent universe and all its forms and creatures, all its names and forms. It is hard to follow Patanjali to such heights, even theoretically, and perhaps it will be well before concluding this chapter if we go back to the beginning and try to recapitulate what he has taught us in a somewhat simpler and less simpler and less technical manner. We have to start by turning the mind, by training. We have to start. So this is the recapitulation. We have to start by training the mind to concentrate. But Patanjali has warned us that the practice of concentration must be accompanied by non-attachment. Otherwise, we shall find ourselves in trouble. If we try to concentrate while remaining attached to the things of this world, we shall either fail altogether, or our newly acquired powers of concentration will bring us into great danger, because we shall inevitably use them for selfish, unspiritual ends. In the Christian tradition, you cannot serve God and mammon. Those of you who are Christian have heard this. You cannot serve God and mammon. If you try, what you'll do is end up serving mammon with the powers you've acquired from your pursuit of God. Oh, our own epoch is witnessing a terrible demonstration of the consequences of this second alternative. 20th century man has concentrated upon science and
Techniques.
And what is the word?
Techniques.
Techniques. So we concentrated on science and techniques without unlearning his attachment to nationalistic power. And so he has the secret of atomic energy, a secret which in proper hands would be harmless and beneficial to all, but which in its present degenerate state may destroy him. And if you want to know how accurate the Swami is, Vladimir Putin is still threatening this. Vladimir Putin is actually verbalizing this. I shall unleash nuclear war, thermonuclear war, and I have the missiles to deliver it, and all these things. Degenerate, degenerate. The danger, as many of our more serious thinkers have pointed out, is not in the fusion of the atom, fission of the atom, fission and fusion. The thermonuclear is fusion. In the fission of the atom, it is in humankind.
Mind.
What is the simplest way to acquire non-attachment? To be
The desires.
the desires, non-attachment, I'm sorry. What is the simplest way to acquire non-attachment to the desires, objects, and ambitions of this world? Simplest. Now notice the Swami says the simplest. So here it is, Rajiv. We must begin by cultivating attachment to the highest object we can conceive of, to God Himself. But as I said, if that escapes one, what do you love? Start there and then find the self, the God within that. We can do this, first of all, on the lowest level, the level of gross phenomena. Take some great spiritual teacher, a Christ, a Ramakrishna, or any major saint of any country or religion. These men and women actually lived on this earth in human form. You can read about their lives. That Love Poems from God book is all about that. That's why I recommend it so highly. You can read about their lives. You can approach them as human beings. And each of those 12 saints in that book show themselves to be so richly and beautifully human, which illustrates what Swami Ranganathananda says in his book, Divine Grace. To be fully human is to be fully divine. You can approach them as human beings. It is easy to grow to love them, to want to be like them, to try to serve them and spread their message by modeling your life upon theirs. How are we doing for time? Okay, it's 12:04. Before we stop, is there anything anybody would like to add? I mean, it's 1:04, not 12. 1:04. Anything anyone would like to add? Anything anyone would like to ask?
I don't have anything to, but the thing is, when we are reading Sri Ramakrishna, he says, when he came to this full concentration, he was not able to get rid of the mother's, the
Yes,
mother's image. in
yes.
mind. That's where he says, I have to cut her with my viveka to go into thee.
My sword of discrimination, is his words. I used the sword of discrimination to cut her into.
He says, to get into the Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. But that's a long way down the road for us. technology. That's a long way down the road for us. Let us have that vision of the mother. Let us have that savikalpa samadhi, that nirvichara samadhi. Let us have that. That's what Swami Prabhupada would say to people who wanted to talk to him about nirvikalpa. He would say, well, my dear, my child. He didn't say my dear, he'd say, well, my child, first achieve savikalpa samadhi. Then we'll talk about nirvikalpa.
Yes, I agree.
In a personal sense.
Yes.
So we must first achieve that vision of the mother, or whatever it is for us, that sense. There is one, only one, but it is something we are still experiencing. There is one, only one, and I am part of that, which is a very, very comforting place to sit, I tell you.
But even Sri Ramakrishna, even after that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, when he comes down, he used to pray mother.
Oh, yes, of course.
So there is nothing like taking it out or anything. It is.
Well, no. As long as you remain embodied,
Yes.
you must you must allow the music to play through you, and the music is mother's music. This is the way Sri Ramakrishna saw it. The music is mother's music. So, of course, yes, he prayed to her, he loved her, he sought her. When someone would tell him something that upset him, he would run to her. When Totapuri was mocking him for making chapatis, as he said, for clapping his hands and singing joyously at the, he ran to the mother and said, is there something wrong here? And of course the mother said, no. And then Tota showed his true colors by getting all upset because somebody took a coal from a fire. He threw an absolute tantrum because somebody took a coal from a so-called sacred fire, Duni fire. Hmm?
Until he also did not realize it until when he tries to commit suicide. Ganga never went more than his knee depth.
Yes, which is an incredible thought.
Yes, that is where he convinced about the mother.
Yes. That form you are wearing, that garment you are wearing, it is not yours. So anything else from anyone, dears? All right. Om Hari Om. Om Asatoma Satkamaya. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Abir Moiti. Oh, dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Oh, lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we go forward in the loving and protective embrace. May we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Jai Ma, Jai Pa, Jai Mommy and Papi. Jai Chairambati Ma, Jai Kamar Pukur Gadai. So, until tomorrow morning, for those of you who decide to join us, the topic tomorrow morning will be from the Raja Yoga perspective. What is meant by one dreamer, three dreams? We heard from my dear friend Gareth Young last week about it from a Buddhist perspective. Very, very aptly. And he saved my bacon because of the events that happened, the death of John Kasich and so on. I was just too whooped to deliver you a good talk on that Sunday. And Gareth, who was already scheduled to speak with us, stepped up and spoke on that day. On October the 1st, we will have a presentation by, rather than celebrating Durga Puja on that day, we're going to have a presentation by Vidyaprana, a Hollywood nun. But then we will do on Zoom, Aditya Chaturvedi will do Durga Puja for us here in our chapel on October the 8th. He's doing it at home, which will also be Zoomed and available to you, not through us, but through him. Though he'll make the link available to us. So that's, and then the last Sunday of this month, tomorrow, as I said, will be one dream or three dreams. The last Sunday will be an open forum on Raja Yoga. The Monday evening class has been canceled for lack of participation. It may be that people just are not all that keen on having a Monday night class, but I'll just wait to hear from you about whether you want to have a Monday night class, and if so, what you might like to use as our text for reading and discussion. So you all know how to email me. And most of you know how to call me, if not all of you. So just let me know your thoughts, and we'll take that all into consideration. But for the time being, and until further notice, there's no Monday night class. Any final thought from any of you? All right, dears. So good to have you here. So good to be with you in this way. Always, always, always. And away we go.